Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is the Facebook relationship status. Now, before I forget, let me just start before I even start the podcast. Let me explain something really quickly. Because I always do my cover art for the podcast before I even record the podcast, I don't want anybody to click on this thinking that, hey, 12 Kyle is single because his cover art says Facebook relationship status single. No, I'm not single. Still very much married. Um and washed. Uh so I just want to put that out there just in case anybody clicked on the link thinking like this podcast was gonna be about some type of confession. Nah, player. It ain't that type of party. That being said, um, Facebook is an interesting place. It is social media. It's honestly, and I mentioned this before, like I've had a love hate relationship with Facebook. We've been off and on. Um, I don't spend as much time on Facebook as I once did, or Twitter for that matter. But um, it used to be a place where I used to come get the news and come get, find out how people were doing. But now it's just like, oh my god, like it's like I can only deal with Facebook for a limited amount of time each day, and honestly, that time is getting shorter and shorter. But I know that there's some people who, through good or bad, live through Facebook or what's happening on Facebook. And I know, honestly, with older people, that tends to be the case. I know, like for instance, like my dad will call me. He was like, "Hey, I saw on Facebook that such and such did this." I'm like, "Dad, I." Or he'll call me and say, "Hey, did you see where such and such said?" No, Dad, I didn't see that because I wasn't checking for it, right? Um, and I know people who've been on Facebook and then left Facebook. So, and I know people who've been on Facebook and left Facebook and come back to Facebook. So, um, it kind of is what it is. Uh, I'll say this much, it Facebook has its positives and negatives, and it depends on who you ask as to what it is for any particular person, right? So, I said all that to come to this. Obviously, you know that on Facebook, um, there are groups. I'm in quite a few groups. I'll be honest, the groups that I'm in, like I never say anything. I never say anything in the group. I never post anything. I don't do anything. There's only like maybe I can only think of like two groups where I actually talk in those groups. And one of the groups, we don't talk as much as we used to in that particular group. Every now and then somebody will drop a post, just to let, everybody know that they're still alive. But, other than that, I mean, like nobody says anything. Well, the other day, uh, in a group that I've never said anything in this group. In fact, to be honest, I don't even know how I got into this group. I think one of my other friends pulled me into this group or sent me like a link to join the group or whatever. And this was like a year or so ago, and I've never because like normally what I'll do is once I get a notification that somebody's posted something, I turn the notifications off, and so I'm in the group but I'm not participating. Right? Okay. So in this particular group, somebody was talking about the subject, I guess, was about relationships or talking about your relationships or advertising your relationships on Facebook. And, I'm kind of in the middle of all of that. Like, I don't know that you necessarily should, broadcast, your relationship stuff on Facebook because obviously, you're projecting to your peers, right? But on the flip side, it could be a sense of accomplishment. It could be a sense of motivation for other people. It could be any number of things. But I think it's a slippery slope. And the reason being is that, like, once you start feeding that to the public, people get used to seeing certain things. And, you know, if they don't see certain things, they're only left to assume. And so, like, I'll give you an example. Like, me and my boys, my crew, right? We have this thing about Facebook. Like, Facebook, a lot of stuff, a lot of times it ain't what you say. And a lot of times it's not even what you post. It's about what you don't post or what you don't say, right? And like, I'll give you an example, and I'm not breaking any crew rules by giving you this example because I'm not going to mention any names. But I remember there was a girl, a young lady who we knew, and like, I remember, like, it was yesterday. It was like all of a sudden she put out this post that she was celebrating her 5-year anniversary. And so, fellas, we went to the group chat, which is not on Facebook. We went to the group chat and we was like, yo, did you know, was married? And we was like, I was like, no, I didn't know was married because has never said anything about a man. And I've never seen post a picture of any guy, but here she is on this picture celebrating 5 years of some random dude we've never seen before. Head scratcher to me, but hey, it is what it is. But more power to Yamin and her husband, if you will. Um, and I think here was what we were able to ascertain from that. I don't necessarily know that she was celebrating, but there were some pictures, that she had posted in previous years where she didn't have a wedding ring on. My assumption and the crew's assumption is they probably had some rocky times in their marriage. She may have been on the threat of divorce and they may have been separated for a while, but they're back together and it's 5 years. And Yamin decided to post a picture of her and her boo. And that became kind of joke and fodder for the crew, but we know her, so it's cool, I guess. To each his own. But I said all that to say this, like, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, and it's worth repeating. And not just with just relationships, but with anything. Social media gives you the highlights, right? It doesn't give you the lowlights. So, like, the day that you got into an argument with your boyfriend, you're not posting that on social media. You're not posting that on Facebook. Who does that? I mean, now, granted, you may know a few people that will do that, but for the most part, most people don't. But anniversaries, birthdays, dinners, that stuff gets posted. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that because myself included, I have hundreds of posts like that. But here's the thing. Sometimes things aren't always what they seem. Case in point. So let's go back to the group that I'm in. So I just happened to be scrolling. I don't know why. I think I got a notification from some, because what happens is you can turn your notifications off in the group, but and I think I had my notifications, I think the notification part was still on if one of my Facebook friends commented on a post or provided a post or whatever like that. So come to find out, I get a notification from this group that I never check. And it's only because one of my friends was responding to a comment that was posted in the group. So I go to see her comment. I see it and I keep scrolling. And I just happen to scroll to the next post. And the next post dealt with the Facebook relationship status. And I'm going to read to you exactly what it says. And I will withhold names to protect the guilty. Quote, I've been living with my boyfriend, quotation marks, Dan, for the past 15 years. He has always worked and he doesn't hit me. Okay. If he's mad, he lets it go easy and doesn't dwell on stuff. I can't say the same about me. Here's the issue. On his Facebook profile, the relationship status section he states that he's quote unquote single. Other times he's used the quote unquote open relationship term or quote unquote it's complicated. We've been together way too long for him to write something like that. I love him, but I don't want to be the future. I don't want a future of living with this from my man. I feel like I'm wasting precious years. Life goes by fast. I'm really thinking about leaving him. What does he mean by doing that? Meaning he's single. Can you advise me? Close quote. And I'm not going to say her name. All right. So after I honestly I had to read it twice because like I was like, really? Couple of things here. It's layered. And I'm not about to give relationship advice because I'm not that guy, right? But she said they've been together 15 years and she doesn't want to waste her time. Ma'am, you may have wasted your time. I don't know. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that you should be married because some people don't, that's not the end goal for some people. Some people don't want to be married, and then some people get married and realize that that's not what they want. So I'm not even going to sit here and say that, she sounds crazy for being with somebody for 15 years and, not being married. Because that may not be the goal for either of them, particularly if it's been 15 years. I mean, if it's been 15 years and they're not married, I can only assume that they, are just down for each other and they have no, desire to be married. And that's cool because again, that's how some people get down. But I think he may just be saying that he's single because in essence, that's what he's in. He is. He's single. He's not in a relationship. And maybe that's how he views the two of you. Now, he could easily, there's a button that says in a relationship. I think there's a button that says married. I think there's a button that says, to be honest, I don't even know the last time I've looked at that section. And I honestly, I don't know that people pay attention to it. I don't, because I think with the way that posts are set up between Facebook and even now on Instagram, people know if you got somebody. Or they know if you don't have somebody. Or maybe they know that you have somebody and you just don't show them off. That's very possible. But I don't know. I think really what she should do here is probably go to the source. Posting this in a Facebook group doesn't really help, I think, because what it does is it kind of clouds the water a little bit. Because I got to tell you, after she posted this, man, it was like 300 comments. It was like 300 comments. And people were actually arguing back and forth. Like there were guys chiming in, there were girls chiming in. I'm like, and I can only assume that most of these people didn't know this woman. I mean, again, I didn't know her because I'm barely in this group. In fact, after I took a screenshot of this, I removed myself from the group. Not because I was going to talk about it, but I mean, like I don't even know how I got in that group. Honestly, I can't tell you. However, I just think like that's a lot. That's a lot. And I mean, again, I think she probably should go to the source. And then number two, I don't think people pay attention to that stuff as much as you think they do. Um, if you're willing to uh, quote unquote show off your relationship, then I think there's a segment of people that are willing to entertain that and willing to listen or see what it is that you post. And then you also have to ask yourself is, how important is that? I mean, y'all been together 15 years. Do you think, I mean, there's I'm assuming that there's pictures of them on her page. I mean, you think people don't think y'all together just because? Now, granted, I understand me, 12 Kyle, at the time of this recording, coming up on 22 years of marriage, right? If I got off this podcast right now and I go to the Facebook and go to that page and type in it's complicated, or I change it from married to single, somebody's going to see that. In fact, quite a few people will see it because some will get a notification. 12 Kyle changed his marital status or changed his relationship status. Some people will see it, honestly. And I'm sure that there probably will be a person or two that may not comment directly on that on my page, but they'll probably slide in the DMs and inquire. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to holler at me. That just means like, hey, so you single? So I don't know. But I think the only, I don't even want to use the word advice. The only thing I could say to her is like, go to the source. Ask him, what did you mean by this? At one point in time, you said it was complicated. At one point in time, you said you were in a relationship. Now it said you're single. What is it? What is this that you're saying about me? I now personally, I don't know that that's something that you should break up with him for unless you had plans to break up with him before. Because honestly, if you've been together 15 years, I don't necessarily know that this is the final straw. Again, I can't pass any judgments because I don't know you. And I'm not even in the group that you're in. So the person who posted this, unless, some crazy circumstance, they're never going to hear this. And so, I mean, like I honestly could have even used her name. She's never going to hear this because she doesn't even know that I exist. But I'm not going to do that. I never use names. But you get my point, right? So Facebook relationship status, I mean, again, I can only assume that you guys, if you've been together 15 years, people probably assume that you're still together. And technically, if he has it listed as single, technically he's still single because single is defined as not being married. Now he's single, but he's in a relationship. But unfortunately, Facebook doesn't have something that says single/relationship. You're either in a relationship, you're married, you're widowed. Honestly, I don't even know what the categories are. I just know that you can be in an open relationship. I think single, married. I could look it up, but I'm not. But yeah, I mean, good luck. Again, I'm not somebody who gives advice because I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. All I know is, what works for me. And that's about it. I can't really tell you like how you should kick it. But I will say this much. I think you're putting a lot, if you're listening, and I'm sure she's not, but if you're listening, I think you're putting way too much into the Facebook status. Way too much. But if you're unsure about how he feels, instead of going to 300 strangers, you probably should go to him. Just a thought. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.